Hello and welcome to day one of my Atlas Mountain race coverage and analysis. It's something new I'm trying on YouTube, and essentially I'm going to look into some of the bigger bikepacking races this year, have a look at race maps and give my views and opinions on what's going on, and try and give a little bit more insight into what happens within these races. I've got a vast amount of footage from various races I've done over the years, so hopefully I can give a bit of an inside glance at the course and the terrain and a bit more of a rider's eye view of what's going on. So the Atlas Mountain race is obviously a race around Morocco. As you can see, it started last night at 6 PM local time. So this is going to be the first morning. So if I go to the Atlas Mountain race website here, it gives you a little bit of an overview of the course. So as you can see, it starts in Marrakesh and we loop up and over the Atlas Mountains, and then there's like a big valley in the middle here, and then in through the anti-Atlas Mountains and loop out towards the coast, towards the west of the country. And this year there's a new finish, and it finishes in a little town of, I think it's called Azuria, on the beach. So that's going to make the race slightly longer than it was last year. Last year it finished in Agadir, but by that point it probably shouldn't make too much difference. So you can see here you've got this extra section on the end of the route. The finish in Agadir wasn't fantastic, if I'm honest, so hopefully this will be an improvement to the race. So let's have a little look at the race map and see what's been going on. So as you can see, the leaders are 250k in. So the race started, so this year the timing of the race has changed. I think it was primarily due to the fact that it is, I think it's about 150k longer, something like that. So in order to try and keep the race timings and the finish time about the same, Nelson, the race organizer, decided to start the race at 6 PM rather than 9 AM. So obviously there's a bit of a time difference compared to my experience at the event. However, I think it's probably going to make it very interesting, to say the least, and also give riders who've done the race before a chance to see different areas in the daylight, because a lot of it is in the dark. I mean, we're just coming out of deep winter. There's almost 12 hours darkness, and it's been pretty cold as well. There's a bit of a cold snap. If I just go to the weather map here on Map Progress, if it wants to work for me, which it looks like it doesn't. Basically the temperatures have been particularly cold, and there's snow up high. Just let me wait 1 second until it's finished trying to charge me for things. There we go. So as you can see, there's a really a cold amount, front of air just sat on the mountains at the moment. So there's quite a lot of speculation about snow up high and about how cold it was going to be. I suspect, like most things, it was probably the speculation was a lot worse. And having seen some of the videos so far, and I was actually there in January as well, I think it probably isn't quite as bad as a lot of people were worrying about. But it is going to be below freezing up high, certainly on the first day or two where the riders are now. But once the riders get further south, I mean, this is the Sahara Desert down here, so I suspect it'll be quite chilly at night, below freezing in the mountains, and then probably around freezing 1 or 2 degrees once you get lower down here, and then during the day into the 20s in the south here. Once the sun's on you, it feels pretty good. Although I found in January, where I was in the high Atlas, I was sort of up in this area here where my mouse pointer is, and I was finding that I was, even if the sun was out, because of the altitude, I was up at sort of 2,000 plus meters. You still wanted to be covered up. You want long arms on, you'd want tights on, you'd want gloves on, because the wind chill was quite chilly, and it was all right in the sun, but if you get into the shade, it really could be quite cold. So it's going to be interesting, because a lot of riders may not have been expecting that. I think they might have thought it was going to be a nice summer holiday. But you have to be prepared for everything in bikepacking. So it could make for some interesting viewing over the next few days. So the riders would have rolled out last night. So I think it probably would have the sun would have just been setting. So just to give you a little idea of what that looks like, this is the start from last year, and it's a neutralised start. Everyone ends up riding as a group because the first 50k are basically on these long straight roads. You can see like the mountains in the far distance there, and everyone just rides together. And you know, it's kind of a fairly controlled start, but once you get to the hills, you can see on the let me go to the correct screen for you. You can see on the profile map here, the first 50k relatively easy, and then you start getting into kind of like the foothills of the Atlas, really. So this is the first off-road section, the first significant kind of climb, and the riders would have been doing this in the dark. I suspect it would have been fairly cold, but it's not too bad. The problem is that riders get very, very tempted to go way too hard, way too soon. To put it in perspective, I finished in 6th position in the last edition of the race, which was in October. And I got to the first checkpoint in 30th position. Just so many people went too hard, and there's some really hard sections. To be honest, I'd probably say the two hardest climbs are in like these first two here. You can see on the map. This one here is a really steep road climb. It's hard. If it's not too technical, it's just tarmac. But it's steep and it just goes on and on and on, and all you can see is the road just kind of going up ahead of you. I overtook a lot of people there last year, and anyone who goes too hard in the first 50k will pay there. And then the hardest climb in the race is this one here up to, I think it's Telouet Pass. So let me zoom in on the map. And there's a significant off-road section as well, the hardest off-road section of the whole race. Generally speaking, the race is on dirt roads. It's you know, you could drive a 4-wheel drive through like probably 95% of it. But this pass of the High Atlas, where are we? Will be up here somewhere. Basically, it's a goat track, and the road up is essentially just an access road that they made to put some pylons in. So I have a small video here. And this is the highest point of the race as well. So this is the highest point. I suspect there's a bit of snow up there. We'll come on to some social media later. There's not too much coming out at the moment because I suspect it's very cold. But this climb up here is super steep. We're talking easiest gear on your bike and almost full effort. And as you can see, the road just stops. And then you have to get off your bike and start hiking. To be fair, if you're a competent mountain biker, it is probably 95% rideable down the other side, but you've got to be super, super careful because you can see it's just rocky. Like one mistake, you can split a tyre and it's almost game over at this stage in the race because there just isn't like bike shops and stuff in, you know, the deep south of Morocco. So you have to be super self-sufficient. Even normal shops, there's not much in the way of resupply, and what there is fairly limited. So, you know, you're going to be underfueled for the whole of the event, whether you like it or not. Omelette and bread is pretty much the main source of fuel for you, which does get quite tiring after a while, let's say. Apart from that, you're talking about little cakes and things like snacks from the shops, but you're not guaranteed that, you know, they're always going to be open. I found it in, you know, I missed a few resupplies, and yeah, it just makes you have to manage your energy, let's say. But let's have a look, see what's actually happening in the race. So, what are we now? We're just over 12, probably 14, 15 hours in now. I'm talking on the 4th of February, and it's 9:15 in the UK. So it'd be 10:15 race time. It would have been daylight for a couple of hours. And it looks like Justinas Levica, who very much has unfinished business with this race, He is trying to establish a lead, so it looks like he's got about 6 kilometres at the moment. So for a bit of context, Justinus was actually leading this race last year by a fairly significant way, and there was some bad weather. And actually, where Justinus is now, there was a river that was basically, it was in flood, so no one could get by, and there was about 10 or 15 of us that ended up in the service station, where I suspect Robin Gempel is currently resupplying. If I zoom in here, he will be at the gas station. So yeah, the whole race came back together, and then Justinus had to kind of re-establish his lead, and essentially I think, to be honest, he was the strongest guy in the race by a very long way. His bike handling skills aren't necessarily the best, but I think he kind of he psyched himself out a little bit, and I think he eventually, whether he wasn't concentrating or whether he pushed too hard, he essentially crashed and injured himself and pulled out the race. You'll find quite a high attrition rate, especially near the front, if people go out super hard and get super cold, or push too hard and hit rocks. Like I said, you can't repair your bike very easily. So yeah, it's a tricky one. So most of the riders come through CP1. I'll just show you what that looks like. I've got a little bit of video. So there's a nice little auberge here. On the left there's a little shop, and this is the place you can get a decent meal quite quickly. They're pretty on it. So if you want a tagine or something, you can get that within 10 minutes, which is something that's quite rare throughout the race. They don't tend to rush, hence omelettes being one of the kind of the things that you kind of go for. And this is probably what it would have looked like for most of them. This is obviously in October, it was raining, and this is a section after the checkpoint. So a lot of the time you don't really know what you're passing. And there's a wide open plateau section after this, and to be quite honest, I just didn't know where I was for, quite a lot of the time, because it all looks the same. It's quite confusing. So that's another consideration with the route. So back to Justinus. He has just crossed the river. He's got a fairly good lead, so it's about 5k. So he's just going into a section now. It's 100 kilometers with no resupply. Incredible riding. He's going to get to see it all in the daylight, which is fantastic. So I'd say the race is pretty much on the same schedule as last year now, because last year we obviously had to wait in the gas station where Robin is, and we probably set off. It's probably about an hour behind schedule, last year's schedule. So actually, Justinus will be quite familiar with what's going on now. So he would have just crossed the river. Let me see if I can find a quick video of that river crossing, just to give it some context. Just bear in mind that this was last year and it was in flood. However, there is snow up high, so I suspect the water in there will be very cold. So if you're doing that in the middle of the night and it's below freezing or close to freezing, you have to consider how cold your feet are going to get. But I also suspect it probably won't be quite as high as this, because this was just after some flood. As you can see where the riders are on the far bank there, that was the height of the river, so there was just no way that anyone could safely cross in the race last year. So yeah, that's where Justinus is at the moment. Looking back down the race, so Robin Gempel, it's interesting. I don't know too much about his cycling background. I do hear he does mountain bike quite a bit. This route does favour mountain bikes. There is a lot of road and dirt road and stuff. However, there's a lot of rocky sections and rocky tracks where just being on a mountain bike is more comfortable. So Robin went out super hard in the TCR this year. He was way up there, but then he faded after about 5 or 6 days. It'll be interesting to see how he goes on this one, but in theory, if you can get 5 or 6 days in TCR, he should be able to keep up a high pace for most of this race. I suspect it will be around the 4-day mark for the winner. Just looking slightly back down, so we've got Oliver Beresford. I have to admit, I don't know too much about Oliver. He's British. I've done a quick search. I think he might sort of be a bit of a road racer. but I'm not 100% sure. If anyone knows, then obviously put a few comments down below, and it will help. And then Sebastian Brauer. He was, I think he was European cross country champion on the mountain bike. He's won the Badlands. He is a bit of a beast, and I would keep an eye on him. I mean, at this point, the dots don't mean too much. I think we're looking at patterns forming rather than like, you know, like a structure for the race. But who's going too hard? You know, one of these guys for sure is going to have a mechanical and pull out or go too hard. It happened last year, and you know, 2 or 3 guys pulled out in the third day, late in the third day. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the same doesn't happen. Matteo De Marchi, he again is I think he took part in the first edition. I think he pulled out. So he's come from a professional cycling background. Obviously, super strong. He's won big gravel races, and I think he's on a mountain bike this year. And he's done things like the Silk Road Mountain Race. So his kind of experience of the outdoors and you know the non-cycling aspect of bikepacking, which is a big part of it. Hopefully for him, that experience will start paying off. So I would keep an eye on him, especially later in the race when it's more of a pedaling race rather than you know the skills and technique. Looking down the list, Stephen Leherek. I actually rode with him last year. He was 5th, I was 6th, and again, solid guy, really experienced. He's the kind of guy that you can't rule out. And there's a few people in this kind of area of the race that if they just keep knocking away, they'll just be catching people further up. Paul Voss, again, an ex-pro cyclist. Again, not 100% sure quite on his experience at this kind of thing. But when you've got an engine, you know, developed as a pro cyclist, you've got a massive advantage. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Kevin Benke, super strong. Again, maybe not super experienced over this kind of terrain, but you cannot rule him out, especially when he gets his head into it and gets used to it further down. He was second to Abdullah Zainab at the Rhino Run by 17 minutes, and I mean, I was there and I did the first part of it, and it's absolutely savage and brutal. So he's definitely going to go well, and I think he's in. He lives in South Africa, and I'm pretty sure he lives in one of the higher altitude places, so that might be beneficial. Jeff Kirkove, super experienced in the mountains, lives in Colorado, used to race 24-hour races, he's done all the stage races, Colorado Trail Race, so he's another guy, you know, just keep an eye on him because, you know, he's got the skills and the knowledge and the know-how to look after himself and come through. Same with Rich Rothwell, obviously a good friend of mine, so I'm probably slightly biased. Good mountain biker, knows what he's doing. Not probably as fit as some of the guys at the front, you know, he's not got that pro kind of background, but you just never know. So yeah, so plenty going on. And then we should also have a look at the women's race, and it looks like Molly Weaver is in the lead at the moment with a fairly substantial gap. Again, it is quite early to you know really make conclusions because you know the race is going to spread out so much throughout the course of it. But I know Molly, and she's riding Albion clothing and Hunt wheels just like me. She's got World Tour experience, so she's an ex-pro, raced the World Tour, you know, raced the Women's Giro d'Italia, things like that. So the engine's in there, and she's just sort of started turning to bikepacking in the last few years. She's got a really good, she's done some really good local rides in the UK, loads of FKTs and things like that. But this is probably one of the first bigger tests in this kind of terrain. So again, much like the fast pro road guys, it'll be interesting to see if she can translate that fitness into a really good result here, and I'm pretty sure she can. If we just go on her stories, she posted from the top of the pass last night. Where are we? So yeah, -8 degrees and a bit of snow. But to be honest, I think now it's probably quite frozen snow, so it should be fairly easy to ride over. And this is further down, so it looks like there's no snow there. And I suspect it is just the very top. And once the first guys have put tracks in, it's going to be pretty easy to navigate up there, probably easier than normal. So that's something to look out for. So yeah, we'll see how the women's race develops. It's quite hard to tell at the moment because everyone's there's a massive dots on the screen. We'll have a quick look at the feed from the Atlas Mountain race itself. So the first riders have come through checkpoint 1 in Telouet. In the lead is Justinas. So yeah, we knew that would have been probably towards the middle of the night. He looked fresh and has only had one light crash. Oh, well done. As you can say, there's a theme with Justinas and crashing, so hopefully he can keep it together. Yeah, Telouet Pass wasn't as bad as they expected. So I guess light snow, and it's just the cold temperatures, and that's probably the last of the snow they'll see because that's the highest point. Ollie Beresford rounds out the top 3, so the pass was savage and that he didn't have the mountain bike skills for it. That's quite telling. I do wonder if we might see him drop off. He's obviously got a really strong engine. Will the rocky tracks and stuff take their toll over time? Or will he just make a small mistake and split a tyre or something like that? It's always a possibility. So it's starting to come together. I suspect we'll have a bit more in the social media side of things as A, it warms up, and B, people are a bit more tired. But if you give Atlas Mountain Race a follow, give Molly a follow, and I'll keep my eyes peeled and I'll try to find some more stuff as the race progresses. So I think that's the end of my roundup for today. Thank you for tuning in and watching it, and yeah, keep an eye out on the race tracker. I'll put the link below. Keep an eye on social media. If you've got any questions about the race, put them in the comments. I'll potentially try and do a question and answer segment to this. And also, if you want more of an in-depth discussion around the race, I was part of the Broomwagon podcast, a new off-spin, Calavanari, with myself, Stefano, and Becky Waters from dotwatcher.com. And we've all been to the Atlas, and so we had quite an in-depth discussion about what's going on there. So I'll share that, and yeah, hopefully it's all interesting. If you like this, please consider subscribing to the channel, and if you hit the notification bell, then you won't miss any of my further updates going forwards. And yeah, thanks very much for watching.